All right, guys, today we got Doug Cook back on. He's on for the third time now. He's been on in groups before, but everybody knows Motion Raceworks. Doug Cook, owner and kind of the face of Motion Raceworks, if you will. And I was thinking about it before. I'm like, man, it's so weird because Motion has become like a brand that probably new car enthusiasts are like, oh, it's probably been around for, 20 years, 30 years. Like, people don't realize that it's a fairly new thing because it has such a strong presence. And I was like, I wonder how weird that feels for Doug to, go from selling medical equipment to the biggest name in automotive in a very short time. It's kind of weird to think about.
Yeah, it's actually, I was really reminded about how far we've come and like all of that. Doing Six Summer, which is back in my home. I mean, obviously I live in Florida now, but most of the time. But back in Iowa, that's like all my home tracks where I used to race. So it's all talking to all my old friends and going to my old tracks and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this is a lot different than the last time I was here. So I hadn't raced there in probably 4 or 5 years, and a lot has changed.
And then bringing the Nova back to there makes it even cooler.
Yeah. No, I actually sat back the other day, and I try not to do too much reflection on the past, but like, I'm like, oh, next year's our 10-year anniversary, which kind of seems fast, but at the same point, it feels like it's 20 years in some respects. But no, it's been a fun ride, and the things we've got to do and the people and places we've been, and, it's just
That
awesome.
seems like a common theme of the successful people that I know. They don't think about their past things that they've done. Like, I've noticed that with, like, Garrett. Like he's done so many, like, weird, like, cool things, but, like, I don't think he spends even like a second thinking about that stuff. It's just gone. Like,
no, he doesn't even want to talk about it.
It's just
I've
gone.
noticed, like, if you're like, hey man, last week when he's like, yeah, because he's already got 10 more things planned. So.
Yeah, it's like completely out of his mind, and it's just like to the next thing, and it's a great way to be, but it's also hectic.
Yeah, I'm just a believer of like you're only as good as your last at bat, and that's probably the furthest back you should be like thinking about stuff, good, bad, or otherwise. So
yeah, so interesting because like I've started to notice that with a lot of people. But the Nova's back, so that was cool. It hasn't gone sixes yet, though, right? No. It's just like, what, 7-0?
Speaking of Garrett, he put some type of like a witch plague on me because like the first or second time out, we went 7-0, and he's like, welcome to the 7-0s. And I was like, that's kind of a dick comment. I don't know what that means. Because, like, we were going like over 200 mile an hour. That's a 6,
Yeah. At 25 passes on the car?
Yeah.
Since it was.
Yeah, and really, outside of Six Summer, we've only been to the track like four times with it.
Yeah,
but
doing it on a drag and drive is like level 10 of difficulty.
Yeah, we made a lot of progress really quick with the car, and then we exposed some things that needed worked on, and it's been like this back and forth game. And then when we got to Six Summer, you got to have strategy. You got to decide like early, and like, do I want to, have a 6-second pass to put as a YouTube thumbnail, or do I want to win? And I like want to win, so like. We just decided, knowing some of the things we were struggling with, and we're just gonna go whatever it can go easily like this. I hate the term A to B pass, but just like nice easy passes, and we knew that would win the class. So that's what we did.
Was the goal to hire a team that follows you in the truck as well?
Yeah.
like a rock star team of Jim and Brett to put them in something simple and be like, hey.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I didn't get much attention. Blaine was getting all like the Brett tuning attention.
That's true. And a Coyote in front of them.
Yeah, and they actually had a lot of their own trials and tribulations. That poor truck, we exposed a lot of weak points in it. So that most of the time, like, we were at the hotel waiting for those guys to get their broke junk to the hotel. So
the truck that you gave them, and then you're like, come on.
Yeah, it was like, it just kept Brett out of the class. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so.
That's fair. I mean, that's probably the best route is to hire him so you don't have to race against him.
Yeah, no, but Brett is an unbelievable resource in tuning and knowledge and stuff like that. So it was nice to have somebody to bounce stuff off of, and
especially with the Coyote and El Toro. I mean, 480s in that thing.
It's unbelievable knowing that thing. Like, that is one thing I like was the first person to look back at. I'm like, I bought that car for $400, welded to a rolling cart, just because I want to develop parts off of it. And like, how are we have like close to mid 4-second car now with this thing? It's kind of nuts.
Like the simplest on a 235, which makes that car really cool.
Yeah.
And that Blaine was just, I mean, obviously Blaine's a rock star with driving it, but like, it is probably a fairly straight down the track car.
Yeah, it's
Not
starting
to take anything away from him.
It's starting to get to that point where the anti-roll bar's twisting and it's starting to drive a little bit. He did a good job, but the car is a huge pile of crap. Just the fact that we built it in 8 days and now, like, obviously we've worked on it since then, but it's really kind of...
Well, it's been through, what, like 5 Dragon drives?
Yeah.
I mean,
but that thing
that's
just...
hard on a car.
We were leaving... At one point, the thing was leaving on like 25 pounds of boost. Mm-hmm. And it was out 60 foot in my Nova all week, so it's kind of depressing on the 26. But
yeah.
You know how it is. It's hard to control a bigger power car, so it's...
Yeah. And you have that high dollar 4-link.
Yeah,
The Fox body.
Believe it or not, so like when I bought that car, it was, like I said, it was welded to a cart, and I was like, I need to get the trunk open. I wanted to look at maybe making some parts that went in that area. And there's a full suspension in the car, like some old like UPR stuff. So I just bolted it on. That's what it's got to this day. So
I mean, it works
really well.
Like with those cars, it's kind of like a KISS.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yep. And you don't really have to go crazy. That car is such a good example of that, where people go overly crazy.
Yeah.
And especially with like in Drag and Drive right now, like 850 cars, really all you need.
Yeah.
If you have an 850 car, you will do any Drag and Drive in the country and have fun.
And you're gonna
no
have
matter
fun,
what the rule set really is, you'll fit somehow.
Yeah, about the only, like, I guess you'd call it exotic, but not really. It just has nice Menser shocks on it. And I think I set them when we put them on the car, and I've never touched them since. And it just, like, I think it's spun like twice ever.
Yeah.
Until that week. Maybe it spun 1 or 2 times that week.
And then putting a bigger turbo on it midweek is kind of
wild.
Yeah, that's kind of how those things unroll, I guess.
Brett has a way of making things get carried away, but he knows how to win. So
he definitely can get carried away. I've seen that firsthand where FL2K fixing his own motor.
Yeah, the guy has no quit in him. It's like he gets this look in his eye, and you're like, oh boy.
Yeah. It's not fun to race against him.
No.
Or race against anybody who he's helping, like Jim or...
Yeah. You're not going to outwork him, and he's got a lot of ideas.
Because you've hired Jim as well. Jim with the white Mustang, and then Brett, they work together on that deal. Me and Jim talk almost every day because he's one of the smartest people I know on that type of stuff. And it's like...
Yep. No, they've been invaluable to the team. So I think your team, is just only as good as its weakest player. So having a bunch of strong people at the top like those guys to add to the rest of them is just awesome.
Breka is the weak link. Just
Poor
kidding.
Breka.
I love Breka.
No, that dude is a world-class photographer.
No, he's great at what he does.
He basically has motion tattooed on his chest, and he works hard. Yeah.
I only say Breka because he would take the jokes.
He takes the brunt of all the jokes.
Tanner would get offended if I said him, so I'd say Breka.
He takes it well.
Yeah. So obviously TBM has been like your biggest child since we've talked last, and TBM, I did not expect you to roll out the products line that you were. I didn't expect TBM to compete in the brake space, I guess you could say. Like drag brakes are kind of their own thing.
Yeah, it was very much a boutique company, but when we bought it, I had this great vision that it was just gonna do its thing, and I was gonna come down here for 6 months or a year and then go back to Iowa, and it's kind of become an animal. So it's not only just expanding the drag brake line, but I learned early on that a lot of the engineering and principles that makes TBM so great in the drag racing world. I was like, man, if we apply these to the street brake market, the street performance market, it's just going to create something really awesome, and it has. And now we have a team to expand it at a fast pace. I think we've made behind the scenes this week, we've made 8 brake kits to go on that XS3 platform. So
so the XS3 are the big dogs, compete with your Bear, Brembo,
I mean,
the bigger style brakes.
We're just trying to
you would probably call them something smarter, like a 6-piston or 4-piston.
Brakes are that brake, and we have more coming, more sizes. That one's a 12-inch brake, so it's basically made to bridge the gap between what comes factory on your Hellcat, which is a big, heavy brake that can handle all kinds of craziness road racing, and our drag brakes. And I think that's a big gap in the market, and the caliper, the rotor package, the weight. Like we've killed it on that. So it's that's where we're applying what we know. Plus we're trying to make them look nice. I feel like, believe it or not, brakes are really judged a lot like on looks. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, especially on like a CTSV,
yeah,
where you guys just did the kit on. The looks are so important on that. Kind of the factory colors are important on that, like the yellow that you guys put on that one.
Yep.
And then they also fit a 17, so it's kind of like you
Yep.
don't lose anything.
Yep.
You actually gain, and you don't lose the stopping power. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think on that CTS V2 kit, which is pretty similar like the S550 and Hellcats, like you can drop 50 pounds off the factory brakes, plus then like you can run a lighter wheel that's 10, 15 pounds lighter, you know. So it's crazy. And that translates into 3-4 tenths of a second off your quarter mile time. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that is so stupid on like a CTSV to lose that much and not actually lose anything.
Yeah.
Because that's the best part. Like, you know, every part you put on a car is a trade-off.
Yep.
You lose something by putting some part on.
Yeah.
So to not give up very much is pretty nice.
Yeah, and when we designed that, we wanted a vented rotor brake, but we didn't want to like give up stopping power. So if you look at the size of pistons and the design of our caliper, like it has as much clamping and braking force as what comes on our factory. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might not road race it for 24 hours straight and have those results, but like when you drive these cars, like one of the important things for me on these brakes was I don't want to give anything up in terms of like a guy driving, you know, on the weekend with his wife or girlfriend or something like that. Yeah. But I also want him to be able to race on them. So we spent a lot of time like perfecting that, but it's a really unique design, like caliper and stuff. But yeah.
Well, it's an interesting market too, as like, you know, cars aren't what they were. So with ABS and all that other stupid things and the weight of the cars, you know, not everybody can just put a tiny little drag brake on things and feel confident. Yep. So a lot of people, like especially drag and drive guys, will probably just opt for the bigger brakes because the extra weight savings from that point on isn't that important to them.
Yeah, I think we're like within 5 or 6 pounds per side of like our drag brakes, which is pretty minimal for most people. Yeah. You know, a guy like me, I'm going to save those 6 pounds, but the rest of them are like, well, I want to drive this car the rest of the year and not worry about it. Mm-hmm. So that's what's important. But
if you're like towing a trailer or something, like on our drag and drive, and you got like a G8 or something like that, like you might want that little extra stopping power.
Yeah, and you're going to get, you know, the pad style we used on this one, you're going to get a lot more life out of, and the rotors and all that stuff. Like, you know, the brakes, I could probably have like a whole podcast just of myself talking, not that anybody would listen, but as I've learned more about brakes, like, the whole concept of like 6 piston and all that stuff is so confused. It's almost like they think because there's more pistons they're better, but like if you look at the square inches of piston and the force being created by that XS3 caliper, it's actually more powerful than a lot of the 6 piston brakes out there. So
I think of like Gale Banks when you say that, where he's like, you ever listen to him just like shit on companies that do things because he's like, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're talking about, but everybody kind of just follows the leader.
Yep.
And it's
6 piston is like a catchphrase at this point, you know, like I can create you a 6 piston brake that's worse than our 2 piston front drag brakes, you know, but for some reason in the normal person's perception, that's still a better brake, but it's not, you know.
It's gotta be. It's got more numbers.
Yeah, more numbers are better. So.
Yeah, I mean, of course. Like, how could it not be?
Brakes are really simple when you get down to a piston size and the amount of pressure being applied to them.
It's just hydraulics.
It's hydraulics, yeah. And
once they're locked up, they're kind of locked up. If you have enough clamping force to lock them up.
Yeah, you got a little bit of brake bias. You got some pad, you know, compounds, and it's not as complicated as people make it out to be. I mean, the engineering is, but you know, making a good system isn't.
And the zero drag is kind of the most important part of your brakes on the TBM side. Is the not binding up when they're. After you release the pedal, they're not still stopping the car.
Yeah, and we have a really bad business strategy because we sell these calipers that don't ever go bad, so we never sell people a second set of calipers or anything like that.
Yeah, you need to take a book out of like some of the other manufacturers or OEM. They're a good shining light to follow of serviceability.
Sometimes the OEM stuff's pretty good. It just doesn't always look that great until recent years. They've started to figure it out, but
Figured out. selling more of them and going bad, or figured out looking better?
Looking better.
Okay, yeah. That's subjective, though.
Sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, because
Like a new Cadillac has good brakes, good looking brakes on
exactly.
it. New Camaro, new Corvette.
like my CTSV has awesome looking brakes on it, but like, you know, you buy a V8 Mustang and they have like the worst looking brakes of all
raw
time.
cast, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they don't even look the same side to side. Sometimes they have like different casting
Yeah.
depending on.
Especially if it was built during COVID when they just threw parts that they could find.
There was a Mustang that rolled out the other day that had mismatching seats. Like somebody at the dealership was like,
as we've been developing brake kits, we found that cars built during that COVID time, like they'll have from the same year car will have different lines and fittings on it, like different sizes and stuff. You can definitely tell they were just trying to scrounge whatever sources for parts they could. And it's weird, this day and age to see that.
Just because. Well, I mean, like I've recently had to do the deep dive into Stellantis, and how do you build parts when they've changed hands every 5 years? Like there's got to be some variation there across the board, and just like little minute things like bolts and like the thread pitches they use here and there. Like
it's all that does is create mass confusion when these companies are always resetting.
Yeah, and then even like somebody like Jim Farley, who's kind of just misdirected across his whole platform of cars. All OEMs seem like all over the place, but you have to work with OEMs in a way because what they make, you want to sell products for, so you have to kind of like...
Yeah, luckily these days I feel like the part that we need, which is like castings, and they're pretty similar. There's not a lot of variation, but I'm sure there's people who are way more, frustrated.
But like new cars that are coming out, like you have to kind of hope that they're good enough where people want them to like be worth developing a part for, or else it's kind of like, me as a consumer need people like you guys to make parts that actually are worth.
Well,
kind of all has to coexist in a way.
To a degree, you're right, but I mean, they're not building any cool cars anymore either. So, like, I think Ford's the only one building anything reasonably cool. Maybe there's a Corvette, but they've basically killed off every other cool car that exists.
Honestly, I think the only other cool cars are coming out of BMW.
In Japan, I feel like the Japanese they're not like wool over their eyes thinking everything's going to be the...
But like BMW, the new stuff is all pretty good.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And even like their Supra.
Yeah. The big three are just building pretty boring and terrible cars nowadays. With like they're just so focused on EV stuff, and it's like the 80s are happening again,
Just like oil crisis all over again. And
don't worry about what the customer wants. We're going to build whatever the government wants us to build.
It is weird as a customer.
Yeah.
Feeling like what you want doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
And then you get the things that do appear are just like, no one wants this.
Yeah, you
it's
wonder
across the board.
Yeah, you wonder how it made it off, the whatever decision table it was on.
And then even like the Hemi, they just kind of stopped with that, and it was like, okay, I guess we're done with this.
Well, and then you like, okay, I'm a EV hater, but like, you look at these EVs they're building, and they're god-awful ugly. Like, nobody had a problem with how cars looked. Like, they're just, like, building these spaceship-looking things that, man, if I was driving an EV, like, and I just kind of wanted to be, like, I don't want to go full, crazy EV person. I just want to have it. You don't have a choice. You're just driving this weird-looking thing that, makes weird sounds when you drive down the road. Have you heard that Cadillac that, like, has music playing when it drives?
Yeah, like I don't hate the humming a little bit, but there is odd noises that sounds like a wheel bearing going. Sometimes you're just like, I think that's just a wheel bearing going.
It sounds like there's like a harpsichord just rattling in the trunk or something. I don't know.
Even like when the Chevy Volt first announced, it was like, why is this not just a normal car? Why
just make it look normal. Like you can have a faux grill and all that, and like not have it shaped all goofy.
Yeah, you would think,
but.
Even the BMW M5 they just announced it, and it was 5,400 pounds.
Wow.
It's like...
How is that possible?
It's hybrid system. It's like, okay, so it's a Silverado?
From a braking standpoint, that's pretty dangerous because now you basically are what a Chevy truck used to weigh.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is? I mean, that's just a lot of mass rolling down the road. That can be a weapon.
And it doesn't look like it. You'd look at it and be like, oh, it's a normal, nimble car.
Yeah, tires and stopping and like.
Well, that's the other flip side of all the heavy cars that everybody keeps saying is the tires are now creating more pollution because the cars are so heavy that rubber pollution is now a bigger concern than exhaust pollution.
Oh, make no mistake. There's nothing clean about any of that stuff. Any of the stuff going on. There's just people with stocks that are pushing the agenda.
Yeah, somebody's got to get a bonus. Some CEO.
Yeah, we'll change how cars are made so we can make more money.
Exactly. But we were recently talking about Sema PRI stuff.
Okay.
And I'm curious how public you've ever been with your Sema concern here.
Well, you should look at
for the industry.
Are
they concerned with the industry?
It's hard to say because I haven't interviewed every single person. What I will say is that there's been a lot of things that have happened, and I know some people have been on the inside or now on the outside that make you think that maybe that's not what they're concerned with. It's a nonprofit. Let's start with that, right?
Yeah.
That has a paid board that are very handsomely paid. Like I think a couple of years ago, the president of SEMA was like making $1 million a year. Don't quote me. I have to look it up. I wish you had somebody like Joe Rogan that could pull it up.
Something around there. Very reasonable.
It's some crazy amount of money. And like, okay, if you're running a representation of a bunch of companies, there's few presidents of these automotive manufacturers that make that much money. So like you're representing these people and you're like in a different elite area of them. So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure they may have started that way or whatever, but there's a lot of money that's not being directed towards the cause, I guess you would say. Like my nonprofit, I have a nonprofit for dogs with degenerative myelopathy. Like I don't take money. I never want to take money. Like in my mind, if you're for a cause, like you make a livable wage and that allows you to carry out your mission. And I think the type of wages that these board members are making is pretty astronomical, last I looked.
Yeah, I would think anybody making that kind of money in the automotive industry somebody making that kind of paycheck is in the high upper tier of this industry.
Yeah,
sure.
And I mean, in all reality, more power to them, I guess. We're not members of any of that. Like we don't partake. We used to have a PRI booth. We don't anymore. It's a very expensive situation that when you see the misdirected funds. Like another good example is if you look at PRI, they spent, the building looks like it cost $20 million. It was 2 or 3 years ago. And I've never seen a peep about it again. Like they had this big.
They weren't quiet about that.
They had a huge opening, grand opening party with catered in, and this is at the same time like Brent from PFI Speed's getting sued, and they won't give him money for a lawyer. They're just like they'll have a lawyer call him and tell him what lawyer to call, but that's like the extent of it. And I'm like, man, we really want to protect this industry, let's look at where this money's going, where we're trying to focus on. Like we should all be focused on that because if not, it's just all gone.
And it's a group of people that probably could all work from home.
Yeah.
That don't
especially
really
during that
building.
time. I think it was literally during the work at home era. So like
yeah.
It was really mind-boggling what was happening and transpiring. And
the only justification I've ever seen for their existence is up in Michigan somewhere they have, or maybe in California, they have their emissions testing center.
Yeah.
Where they'll help companies kind of develop.
Yeah, I think that's worthwhile. Like
I haven't seen any success stories that I know of, but I've seen their facility photos.
I'm definitely a critic, and I think there's a short way to get back on track, but it doesn't seem like the right people are taking the reins to get right back on track or to move in the right direction and all that. Maybe there's stuff I don't know. Maybe I'm uninformed. I don't spend my day researching their undertakings. But
that's fair.
When you go back to that, you're like, man, why haven't all these companies been invited to this facility to learn this, and that? I don't know.
I know. But I haven't been invited to anything.
But there's a lot of bad nonprofits out there that are just a disguise for money. So like, even some of them that you think are good. So it's kind of all up to the consumer or whoever, the beneficiary or unbeneficiary to research. Look at how much the board's making. Are they taking trips to Hawaii to talk about business? That was one of the things the Sema members used to do. They might still, they might not.
Go to Hawaii to discuss.
I don't know.
You got to meet for your convention, it's all part of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a club in a way.
Yeah.
I'm always so skeptical of any organization when they get big enough to where discretionary funds exist and you can kind of just no real checks and balances in a way, and things just kind of happen.
Well, and you got to look at who comprises a board up too. Like some of the people are people who sold out to the industry, left people high and dry, are not do-gooders before they joined, or became executives, whatever. So what makes you think they're, there in that capacity? I don't know.
Yeah, it could also be just a group of people that couldn't actually make it as business owners and decided to be
kind of like professors or teachers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot easier to legislate others and to, have say over others than it is to actually be and do. It's one of the great things.
Yep.
You can just control others if you want to.
Yeah. Rather than make money, we'll act like a nonprofit.
Exactly. But with all of these bigger companies, it almost seems like, you've always hated the big capital in this industry, but now it seems like it's almost to the benefit of you because they just ruin brands. And this brand that maybe you would have had to compete with before, they just killed it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you just destroyed the competition for me with buying them out.
Yeah, in some ways it's good. From a purely business standpoint, but I want to see the industry succeed, in a kind of a sick way. When somebody wants to compete against me, it gets me really motivated. So, when I'm not saying it's become easy because of these people, but you're right. There's a component of them. You're like, oh, they bought that. It's ruined. Okay.
Yeah.
That's our market now.
We own something that was good before.
Yeah.
Now everybody kind of knows almost immediately in this small industry that yeah, those suck.
But in the same respect, I always hate to see it too for the employees of those companies because without naming names, there's a lot of smart, motivated people who have washed out because of all the big corporate BS. Nobody can literally. It's a very predictable process. Company A gets bought. They fire the top 4 or 6 people because that's the easiest cost savings. Yeah. Then the rest of them just become this slave to this machine, and where they used to get to develop cool parts and be involved in racing in the industry, now they're just relegated to saving money and learning, just trying to figure out how to increase the EBITDA of this business, the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation of assets. And next thing you know, they're communicating with people overseas on how to make these parts as cheap as possible with no quality control, and then they quit.
Yeah.
And they, just
such a weird
go off the grid. It's
such an easy cycle to watch, and
it
still
is.
happens.
It's very predictable too, and it's always the people hey, so and so bought it, but we're not changing. It's all going to stay the same, and then a year later, man, this isn't what it used to be. And then another year later, they're calling me asking for a job or, just generally depressed. But it sucks because, I think if you look at these, I call them historical brands, they brought so much to the industry, and now they're just basically a shell they're using the brand. You know what I mean? They've gutted everything else about it, everything that made them good. And those people where do they go to thrive?
Yeah, it really leaves a fracture in the whole industry. And of course, we're in a hobbyist industry, so kind of no secret, the economy's not doing great. So,
not at all.
Obviously going to be less hobbyist spending. I mean, I would assume. I obviously don't have any
and then
any precedent. I don't see any backends of any computer stuff, so I don't know. But
from
the outside,
there's a couple publicly traded ones that you can watch. That they may have sunk their own ship, but they're probably just, you can see that they're down. And to kind of tie it all together, I have this. It's not even a conspiracy theory that BlackRock or whatever big funds are consolidating these so that the government can be you're done, you're done, you're done. They only have to tell 3 people they're done at some point rather than hundreds of like patriotic, hardworking people. They're just like, we bought you out. There's no more racing. There's, we don't want to deal with this anymore. And this guy with penny loafers from the government and this guy with penny loafers from the big corporate speak the same language. They go out to dinner, check signed, and it's all over with.
Bureaucrats really are the worst.
Yeah.
I don't understand how
they run the world.
There's a whole area where they all congregate.
Yeah.
It's a scary spot.
Yes.
I know a couple people that go to D.C., and have to fight this stuff, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, you have to deal with this.
They eventually become one of the people they're fighting against, and it's not that far divided.
There's a few in our industry that always deserve the shout-out. Recently, Corey Willis with PPEI, he's been fighting...
That's an American patriot right there.
That man's been fighting the good fight. I got to shout him out because he just won the case against...
Oh, he did?
The Supreme Court just ruled on it today that the Chevron Act is revoked. So all of these 3-letter organizations, they no longer get to write the laws. They have to, Congress has to write the laws, and they get to enforce them.
Yeah, which will never happen. Yeah.
But yesterday, they ruled that they no longer get to be the judge in these cases. So the Supreme Court yesterday took away the SEC's and the EPA's ability to be the judges. And today they took away their ability to write the laws.
Beautiful.
So it's kind of just gutted the agencies pretty heavily. And huge shout out to Corey he spent millions.
Yeah, I've watched that guy from afar, and I'm like, yeah, my hat's off to him because he just doesn't quit. Mm-hmm. He doesn't care what anybody thinks of him. He's... I think he's a guy that would go down in flames if he had to. Almost did, it seems like. And that's really cool.
Yeah, so
I wasn't even aware of that.
It's a big win that just happened for the industry.
But I'm sure early on in his fight, not that everybody is some martyr hero, but people are like, dude, just give it up, pay your dues, pay your fees, and go away, because that's just how the world is. There's a lot of people, that don't have a backbone anymore and don't stand for anything. And that guy had the guts to say, no, I'm not doing this.
There's also an element of talking to the right people. JH and PFI Speed, they both got hit, but if they didn't talk to the right people right away, their sales got deflated pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You when you started business, I'm sure there was plenty of times where you're like, I think this might be the time to wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, this is going back to the whole Sema PRI thing. The fact that they didn't get behind both of those guys, I know both of them contacted people at both. There's maybe somewhere in the penny loafer meeting, these people are like, no, we'll be exposed and liable. Well, they're already exposed and liable. You represent these companies and these things. They have, you're congregating millions of dollars. Stand behind these people and win these cases, and it would have fast forwarded all this stuff. And as well as I do, every time something like the PFI deal or Corey happened, it would put a ripple across the industry for days, weeks, months. Most of us just kept moving forward, and we're working towards something better. But
for every person that was outspoken, there was 5 that paid the fine and didn't say anything.
Exactly.
They didn't want to get hit again.
Yep.
They're I've talked to so many people that are like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. And
they won't even bring it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, that's so weird. Why don't you want to talk about it? What are they do you have some reason you can talk about it?
Yeah, is there a gag order?
Did you sign something?
Yeah.
Did you give somebody up? Did you what did you why is there this worry?
The weird thing about, we can go on this for days, but I've looked a little bit into the Corey's deal. The thing he got charged for, at least in one of his violations, he also did. He was tuning diesel vehicles, but he put the same tune-up in government vehicles that are driven on the road, and they were fine with that. So it's this double standard, and it just blows my mind. So
they deemed DEF and diesel particulate filters too unreliable to have on government vehicles.
So they took them off.
So they didn't have them on. But as an average citizen, they are perfectly fine for you to have on. And it's you just admit it. You just said the quiet part out loud. You just told me. They're not good enough.
It was the government is, we can go on for days about this, but like it's just one big.
Inefficient.
It's so bad. I mean, anybody that's ever had DEF in a diesel can tell you it doesn't even take a scholar to be like, okay, what got this DEF here is not worth anything in terms of the emissions it's potentially saving, which isn't, because vehicles without DEF and DPF get better fuel mileage. It's proven, but it just blows my mind. But
yeah, it's very sad. And I always say, even like, if you give a car guy free reign on making a car, he's going to probably make 2 cars. He's going to make one that's very efficient and then one that's very loud and noisy and he drives sometimes. That's the dream. You have one car that gets like 100 miles to the gallon to commute in, and then you have...
Well, just
it's the natural progression.
The natural progression of motorsports has made big improvements in efficiency of vehicles. Like, you learn a lot from the performance. Like, they're very closely related. It just one is made to go fast and one is made to save fuel mileage.
That's
like
what most people want.
Yeah.
Most consumers just want the most mile per gallon possible.
Yeah. Not that I'm like Robin Hood for having 2,000 horsepower, but like,
pretty cool.
And not that I'm relaying that back to whoever, but it's like all that innovation comes together at some point.
Yeah. You could have 5,000 horsepower, though, from what I hear. Isn't that what the cool guys are all getting to now? The second I got to like 1,500 horsepower car, people around me got to like 3,000 and 5,000, or saying numbers that are just maybe they're just saying 5,000 for a title.
Oh no, there's definitely 5,000-6,000 horsepower Hemis out there.
Street cars.
Whether you want to change the rods in it every 10 to 20 passes is a different story.
That I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to maintenance my car that heavily at all.
No, that'll eat up most people's maintenance budget for the year in 20 passes.
Yeah, it'll also just, for the average guy, it'll just destroy you, like, mentally.
Yep.
Being like, I've seen a lot of people do that, and you probably have too. They bite off more than they can chew on, like, a badass race car, and then it's like, yeah, you got to change the valve springs, 20 passes in, and it's like...
Oh, that's why you see rich guys come and go from, like, the pro mod, top tier, radial, whatever worlds very often.
Yeah. It's hard.
They, at the end of the year, they look at their pocketbook or whatever their fund, and they think about how hard they worked and how much they traveled, and they're like, this sucks.
Yeah, somebody like Lyle seems like he's got the right move to racing a pro mod, and he obviously races it with a Rife sticker on it.
Yeah,
much of the time.
So it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good for him, where he gets to kind of.
Yeah, unless you're a guy like I told Brett, he's already primed for racing a pro mod at some point, just because how hard he is willing to work on whatever. But that's become a big thing. Like Stevie's got a show up and drive program now, where he builds the motors, service the cars. They have a new facility, and I think for most people that's the only way it can happen. And you're not going to save money by doing it yourself. You're either going to spend the same money and lose, or maybe win. But
I see people that are currently racing switch to Stevie's program. You know what I mean? Not new people getting in, but people that are like either had just raced or like currently have their own program, and they're just like, I don't want to run my own program. I'm just going to sell it off. And
yeah, I mean, just the way those cars are, it's just like pro stock has become, where you have 2 or 3, 4 teams that have to run it all, because it's just too much to develop the engines and maintenance and all that stuff.
But even that, I mean, you zoom out on NHRA in a whole, and I know they still post record numbers. I just don't know who's watching and who are these record numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know a single person that sits down and watches NHRA on the weekend or in the stands or...
Yeah.
I like a select few people.
Yeah, I think people like you and I are different because we race ourselves and we have, we're just more motivated by our own thing. But they obviously have a market.
They have quite a market.
Yeah, they have a market.
I just don't know where the market comes from. I'm confused by that. It's like one of those, who's buying this?
Yeah. If racing's happening, I'm happy.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'm definitely
We should all
not,
be happy, right?
I'm not against NHRA. I'm just against me being involved in it.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. I'm not jumping to conclusions, but neither one of us could probably afford it. So
No, not at all.
Yeah.
They kind of encroach on all racing though a little bit.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, kinda,
what is really cool in my mind are like the stock, super stock classes. Or you'd like them if you like dug into them. That's real cars with limited budget type of stuff, and obviously it gets out of hand. But that racing's pretty cool. Small tires, heads up if you get next to the car that's identical to yours.
I do like Outlaw Pro Mod. I like that.
Yeah, the stuff at Bradenton during the winter.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, like, if you haven't been down here for those races, it's hard to explain that energy.
That I'll watch all day long.
Yep.
Outlaw Pro Mod.
Yep.
But then, I don't know. There's just a barrier there. I think it's a personal barrier.
Yeah. It's a very generational, like, traditional thing. If you weren't raised in it, there's a little bit of an outsider effect to it.
I wasn't raised near cars at all.
Yeah,
not
so
even
definitely
in the
not.
slightest.
Yeah.
Especially, I just cared about street cars, and then that kind of like streetcar progression brings you to like a radial 275.
Yep.
Because that's kind of the natural progression, but streetcar progression doesn't really bring you to a pro mod normally.
No.
It's kind of like
maybe
I
could see it
some
happening.
people.
Yeah.
Garrett maybe he's going to be like
He's
kind of a pro mod.
he's gonna have a pro mod. I mean, he basically does already steel roof and quarter pro mod, but he's gonna have a pro mod.
It's kind of a pro mod without a purpose though.
Pro 275 is about what he's gonna be relegated to. Maybe
Still gonna be
extreme.
tough.
Is it gonna fit extreme 28s?
No,
Really?
definitely not.
Yeah. If it does, there'll be a rule against it for too long.
I don't think it'll fit.
Yeah.
I don't think.
that is. Yeah, I mean that's a quintessential Pro 275 RVW type of car, so it's cool.
It's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
It's gonna have a lot of Motion Raceworks parts on it, I'd imagine.
You're damn right.
Yeah. The Rife Sensors deal is an interesting one because to me that seemed the farthest fetched in a way because chips, computer stuff, electrical stuff is very different from everything else you guys do.
Yep.
Running a CNC machine is very different than a chip.
Yep.
So,
well, in a lot of ways, if you look at how sensors are made and adapted, like much of motorsports just uses whatever industry has available to it. And when we bought TBM, it was a package deal. You either had to buy both or you had to buy one. They were owned by the same company. And so I was like, we'll give it a shot. But we had a lot of ideas and just repurposing, repackaging how things are done. Like now all of our sensors have a DTM connector option. They used to use that crappy MetroPack stuff that falls apart and, just is not that user-friendly from a crimp, that type of stuff, the blocks, all that, the sizes and threads. If you look like 10 years ago, like a lot of sensors used to be like the old brass fittings that had like 6 adapters and stuff like that. So
wait, are you saying those aren't good?
I mean, it still work. They still work.
Race car?
They still work.
Huh. Feel a little offended.
Don't take them off.
Yeah,
but
like a brake.
I think there's just like
switch.
adapting and making things easier to use and having less adapters and all that stuff is kind of what we're about, and that's what we focused on. So we're not necessarily inventing, some new core processor or something like that.
It is still complicated though compared to CNCing parts.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more. They're this big and they got a bunch of shit going on inside.
Oh, definitely. Like right now, I mean, we machine all the bodies. We assemble them like those new DTM sensors. We learned how to create molds and have custom molded parts and pins, custom made. And we're always just trying to take whatever the latest technology is and put it together in a meaningful way. So it's pretty neat. And we have a new facility being built for sensors only, where we're going to have like some automation. We have people that are doing it all I think a lot of people think it comes in this big package and you just put Rife label on it and send it out, but it's really pretty cool how watching our guys build stuff from zero to done and ship it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that sell sensors and a lot of them happen to look the same.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot of value in calibrating stuff, verifying it's good and all that stuff. and maybe they're probably smarter than we are in terms of in a lot of ways. But like I said, we're focusing on just trying to make things different and easier to use. So
I kind of always assumed it was more like injectors, where everybody kind of uses a Bosch injector, and then what they kind of do with it, their little bit, is what sets it apart.
Yep.
But there is a lot that could set them apart.
Yeah, and to a degree, a 100 psi sensor can be very similar to another 100 psi sensor. How it's used, how it's packaged, the accuracy. Like, they might not be the same one, but like, what differentiates it? And that, like I said, that's kind of what we're focusing on.
Yeah, and even recently you guys announced the wastegates and blow-off valve stuff, or blow-off valve stuff only at the moment, which I was surprised at. I'm always surprised at all of your products, not all of them, but a lot of the products, because I'm like, man, I'm surprised they wanted to get into that market, because a lot of these markets are very heavily populated by some long-term players.
Yeah, and I probably am not the best. If I was reviewed by a business scholar, I'm probably not the smartest guy, but I do like to try things, and I think that's led to some of our best stuff. Like the blow-off valves, honestly, I think our first 3D print of that went back to like 4 or 5 years ago. And the last 2 years, it sat there. We spent a lot of design time on it. We made it how we wanted, and then like eventually we were just like, we had a machine free, so we made some. Then we tested them for a couple of years. And we just sat there, and I was just like, I don't know if I really want to get into this market or not. But we've come this far, so then we just released it. So
that was my first thought. I was like, oh, you're going to make a product that could come to market and just not, is like a crazy thought.
Well, in my younger years, I was a lot more ambitious. Some might say that I've gained ambition, but like there was a time, too, during COVID when you would call to order, for us as a vendor, we would call to order products and people blow you off or say like they'll get to it when they get to it. And a lot of this stuff stems from that. Like, well, we'll just make our own then, So it's not that different than anything else that we make. So it is, but it isn't.
I mean, it is crazy to me too, because like there's a lot of different moving parts. Like with the throttle bodies, there's a lot of different moving parts. Like a lot of your parts you had until the throttle body and like shifters and stuff were like stagnant, kind of stationary parts. Like they didn't they were actively do anything.
2 or 3D parts that had no moving parts.
Yeah, like, and that's not to be disparaging of it. It's just like that's like a level up of engineering.
Yeah. Our original parts were like turbo flanges and valley covers and stuff like that. But eventually you get tired of like, or you get bored, I guess you'd call it. And
it's what separates you too, because anybody can make a turbo flange with a CNC machine, but to make a throttle body or a shifter that operates correctly and does its thing is not the same. And
luckily I have an awesome team, Dennis over at Motion. I always tell him if he ever retires, I'm retiring too. Luckily he's my age, but they're kind of like, sometimes they'll look at me like I'm crazy, but then they'll just get working on it. And but again, back to the buyout of the companies, like I feel like we have a little bit of a duty to keep this whole industry going. And it's kind of almost like a insurance policy on the industry that we get into some of these areas. Because I'm looking at, I won't call it any specific product, but I'm looking at these products and I'm like, okay, that's going to sell in the next 5 to 10 years. This one's going to sell in 2. This is like, I already know. And so I think to myself, well, if we don't make it, what good options potentially are there? Or is it an opportunity that when that does sell, that we just take over that much more market share? So
that's the flip side too, is if you buy or compete with. Because, TBM, the argument could have been made, you could have just hired your own guys and engineered your own brakes. Or buy them out. Fluid Works, buy or just compete.
Again, back to complicated parts. Sometimes it's easy to, if somebody's willing to sell, that you just buy them. Not that we're not programmed like these big companies. Like when I buy a company, I probably go the opposite way of EBITDA. I'm going the way of like, how can we make this apply to more stuff and make it a better product line? I think a lot of people get it confused. Like, well, you're doing the same thing as everybody else. I'm like, no, I'm not. we're retaining the people. We're taking a product to the next level with our expertise and what we do well. We're taking their awesome design. Like TBM, the technology was and still is out of this world. Like I don't even worry about. I'm not really. I don't concern myself with competition, not in like a boastful way, but we just want to keep making new products. That's how we grow.
TBM for how long, and Jason's still there.
Yeah. Yeah, he'll be 20 years this year. Obviously, we've only owned it for 4, but
he's still there, which is a clear point that it's still in his mind going the right way.
Oh, yeah.
You look at other brands and maybe the owner stays for a little bit longer, but then they jump ship pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we had 1 or 2 guys leave, but like Jason's a very integral part of the company, and I think he's really inspired by where we're headed. We have a lot of young, motivated guys who, like I said, we made like 6-8 applications this week for brakes that will be coming out in the next 2 weeks. How much fun is that to ride that roller coaster? So
that's cool. And even getting to bring like a car in and doing test fits and like actually doing that kind of on the ground R&D is a lot cooler than most brands are doing.
Yeah.
So I like seeing that kind of stuff. But even selling things on the Motion Raceworks websites just gives so much more like consumer confidence to people that they're not just buying it from the company it was before. Like, obviously TBM has always had good products, but people didn't really know.
Yeah,
they didn't know them as much. Like they weren't as like confident in like, oh, I'll be able to buy repair parts forever just because they didn't know. And
just the life cycle of companies is, we bought 4 companies now, and as it becomes more mature, they're not as motivated. There's not a lot of excitement. Not that that's a bad thing. I'm sure I'll be there at some point, but we try to make it our same principles. Like we want to have it on the shelf. We want to be able to ship it same or next day in any possibility. And we want to keep making it exciting and new and try to adapt it to new things. So.
Yeah, and sponsor racetracks, which is always one of the main things that you have to talk about when you talk about Motion and the brands is you will see their signs at racetracks and events, because if you notice, the brands that aren't don't really deserve your money.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
You're exactly right.
Say, from a consumer standpoint, if you zoom out and you look at the ones that actually care about the racers and actually care about servicing the racers, I mean, you guys service TBM Brakes on location at NHRA races, right?
Yep. No, I think not just us, but there's a lot of people. And if you look at these big companies have pulled back because it's easy money to add to the bottom line profit. When we sponsor tracks because we believe in it, Raul from SGMP called us and he was just like, hey, I have this scoreboard open. Do you want it? I was like, yep. Yeah. He's like, I didn't even tell you the price. I'm like, I just want it. Like, I'm excited about it. I'm proud of it. And, but yeah, these big companies are like kind of backing into the bushes and they think nobody notices, but they notice, like when VP Racing's on site at Sick Week or, whatever, and they are there to provide fuel, that makes a difference. That makes you want to buy from them the next time.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I've always, shouted out UPR for showing up.
They're everywhere.
They bring their parts out there and they help people on site at all these events. And it's like, they care about the racers. And it's clear to see. It's as clear as day to
Fuel
see
tech.
Who cares about racers or doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard. Like, that is not a... like when we don't go back from these races like swimming in money, hopefully we just hope to ever break even like on the sales we make there. But long term it's a good strategy. It's hard. It's not the most profitable strategy, but you just want to buy from Fuel Tech. You want to buy from Mickey Thompson because they're always there, even though they're a big corporate company. You want to buy from VP and like you said, UPR and all those guys. So.
Yeah, I've recently I've started to come to the conclusion that American made isn't really enough though to get my business because some people just make junk expect just because they put like USA made, it doesn't really it's not really enough to justify that you have to support that brand just because they're the ones that make it in the US. It's kind of a weird double-edged sword in that.
Yeah, it's definitely been overplayed too. Like like you said, there's just as much nice stuff that comes out of Germany, Italy, Japan.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes nicer.
yeah, and
Japan's great with tech. Like
if the culture isn't there of the company, like
Australia has so much good parts.
yeah, exactly. Although some of them come from China, then to Australia, then here, which you see a lot of bad imports come from Australia too.
Yeah.
A lot of good ones. A lot of good parts come from Australia, but
There's a few people I know that
not to be
actually
confused.
are CNCing parts and making
Yes.
things there.
yeah,
And
there's a lot of good stuff, but I mean, it's like anything else. There's just a potential for bad stuff to come down the line, and bad business as well, like take your money and run type of situations.
yeah, I get slightly frustrated by that like notion of you earn my business by just making it here on this soil, but it's like you actually have to make a good product too.
Yeah,
You don't get to just disguise yourself
no.
to make a shit product in the U.S. just because.
Oh, I mean, if we didn't like, you still have to have quality control, and like just to make it in the U.S. doesn't make it better. It's usually the culture and the people and the pride behind it that makes it better, because there's actually a connection to the market you're selling it into.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the big three stuff. It's like, being an American car company doesn't suddenly make you good enough where you earn my business. Like,
Especially as you watch like this huge disruption between the workers and the corporation. Like,
yeah.
how much pride do they really take anymore? I mean, I know they do because they're hardworking people, but like, as that disparity keeps widening, like what happens?
Well, there's this like middleman in between the company and the employees called the UAW that really ends up screwing things up for them all. But they think that actually the UAW cares about them. But
I won't go down that
the
path.
guy in charge really only cares about his bonus.
Yeah, and anything well-intentioned usually doesn't stay that way forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a tough deal to be forced into this union that doesn't care about you. But most people that are part of the UAW actually don't like it.
Most of them are hard. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's that or they have to leave. So, it's a tough spot to be in.
But at some point, you're going to just have to make your own car.
No.
You'll just have to start to finish.
Well, maybe when they won't when like all these spineless like big three all stop making gas-powered vehicles, we will.
What if Chevy sold you the rights to make Novas?
I'll take that.
Like, that would kind of make sense.
I would start tomorrow.
Nobody's doing it, so maybe.
Hopefully somebody else orders them other than me, but yeah. No, that'd be cool.
Probably would be.
Yeah.
If they just rolled back some regulations a little bit.
Yeah.
The Nova could roll back out.
Yeah, finest vehicle ever made.
Yeah. I'll show my age here. I always mix them up with Chevelles all the time. And I know that's probably offensive to you. But
I get that more than you know, but a real Nova guy is kind of mad about that.
I'm like started in 2000s car knowledge.
Yeah.
Some 90s, a little bit of 90s, end of 90s, but mostly 2000s. Like third gens, they just don't do it for me. And I know
it's an acquired taste. It's an acquired taste.
Is it becoming more acquired?
I don't know.
Or you think
are they growing on you?
No.
Seen me drive by your house with them?
Well, you had a collection of them, right?
Yeah, I think anybody's favorite car usually stems from some type of nostalgia. Like,
do you like
for me?
No,
but I never grew up with any. So I grew up. Jared, who works for me as my operations manager, had an IROC, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And we did burnouts, up and down the street. He was my brother's age, and so that's why I like IROCs. But today, I have a couple IROCs that are in the 100 original mile state, and I drove one of them the other day from one garage to another storage garage, and I was like, what a pile of shit this thing is. It drives terrible, but it made me happy. So
not much space in the interior, kind of some bad plastic,
a lot of rattles, but they look cool and they take you back to a better time.
Yeah,
that's why 57 Chevys had their era. Now they're not in demand. The prices have gone down. 69 Camaros, they're still up because they're the people who love them are still of the age to own them and pay a lot of money for them. But third gen's next, man.
I'm sure there's plenty of people punching the air right now. Fourth gens are so much worse than third gens. It's like,
I like them all.
I didn't really grow up with any cars though, so I kind of just
Yeah.
my taste was fully independent of.
So you like tan fourth gens that came with V6s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How could you not? I have two.
That too is an
I
acquired taste.
personally have two of them.
That's an acquired taste as well. I call that retirement tan. That's what the name of that color is.
It's not my fault GM used pewter so heavily for so many years. Across the board on anything they made, they were just like, spray it with pewter. I don't know.
Yeah, they just thought, what if we could make a color that looks normal dirty?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't look dirty when it's dirty.
Well, that's why
let's
it fits
do that.
me.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah, you're a low maintenance type of guy.
very.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I don't have Sam follow me around like you guys.
Yeah.
I don't have, like, I've seen your Nova, and anytime I've seen it, Sam shows up, and he just, like, after a pass, it just, like, cleans
Well,
it right off.
Sam comes to your house, you're going to hear a buffer running at some point. So
Yeah. And, like, between having high-polished wheels and a clean car, I don't know, I wouldn't not be able to keep that together.
I just try to keep the weight off the wheels, like no powder coat. That adds unnecessary weight.
Yeah.
All that.
So, were you surprised to see a car stolen on race week that wasn't Pueblo? I've been to Pueblo a couple times too. Shout out to anybody in Pueblo. I hope you're safe.
There's a lot of good people from Pueblo. You're gonna get me in trouble because I was boisterous for a while, but then I did come to the realization of like, hey, it's like anywhere else. There's good and bad parts of town. I do think some of the bad parts of Pueblo are worse than most towns, but
like, I wouldn't be offended if somebody was making fun of Bradenton. I'd be like, okay. Like,
yeah. Well, my hometown,
move it up.
Davenport, Iowa, has some rough parts. Not much better, but no, it sucks. I hate that. Like, it's always my biggest fear when I go to. Sometimes I just can't sleep in the hotel.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there, or I'll get a room where I can look out over it. Obviously, have like tracking and stuff and all that, but like. That sucks.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, race week still going on, I think, today.
Yeah.
There was 2 cars stolen, a father and son duo, one 6th-gen Camaro and one...
It's like a 69 Chevelle, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually the Dallas Police Department contacted me. They saw that I had shared... They found the Chevelle... I don't know if they like tore the identification off of it or whatever, but they saw on my Facebook post that somebody was looking for it.
It was a bright orange Chevelle. It's hard to not.
They're like, hey, we saw your post
spot.
was getting circulated and we found this car. So we put them in contact, but it got gutted pretty bad. It sucks.
Yeah, it's stripped down pretty good. Like no motor, no trans,
Yeah.
no hood, wheels.
Gone in
kinda,
60 seconds type of stuff.
Yeah, and it was only gone for, a day. And they tore it out pretty good. And it was on like the side of the road. So they must have had to take the engine out.
Yep.
On the side of the road, which is...
Those people are efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened a few years ago in North Carolina when we were there. Like,
Well, you have to think, too, if you don't care about putting it back together, it's pretty easy to take apart.
that is true. If you don't actually have to put it back together at all.
Yeah.
It's
Cutting a
pretty easy,
wiring
yeah.
harness instead of taking it off is a lot
Yeah.
quicker.
I mean, you don't even have to cut it. I've just jacked.
Until it pulls off. I've literally picked a car up by a ground wire, so that might not be the
Eventually,
best.
something will give.
Maybe. Drive off with it.
Especially the weight of a Chevelle. I mean, something's going to give on the wiring.
I feel so bad for those people. I hope as a community we can get them back out racing because that's, man, there's not enough of us enthusiasts to lose somebody because they had everything taken from them.
Yeah, it's just unfair, Like, obviously, nothing's ever really fair, but it just sucks to be, like, off doing something and, like, you just wake up in the morning and you're just... It's gone. Like, you're...
That's why I think I'm a strong supporter of drag and drive should all be in states with concealed carry permit options. So,
Well, all states you can conceal carry.
yeah.
You just... You take the risk a little bit.
Yeah.
Technically...
Freedom, yeah.
Technically, between you and me, it's fine.
It's fine. I've never been pulled over for that, so I don't know.
Yeah, I've never been pulled over for... I mean, you can't really... If it's concealed, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd rather have it. But most drag and drives are. I mean, in the state of Florida, at least. I think...
Yeah, I think they issue you a sidearm when you start a
Yeah,
week.
you don't even need a carry permit in Florida anymore. We went to constitutional carry.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, live it up. It's kind of just...
Freedom.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. The performance shop stuff is interesting too because, it's at Bradenton Performance Supply.
Yep.
And it's crazy the commitment that guy, like, shout out to them. Committing to stocking parts like that at a brick and mortar store is so awesome to see. It's just like, and he stocks a ton of motion stuff.
Yeah, they're great people there, and I try to post as much as I can about them. Like when races are here, if you're ever at Bradenton Motorsports Park, these people are literally a few miles down the road, and you'd be blown away at how much stuff they have. And yeah, like you said, it's a labor of love because it's not a super lucrative thing because, again, back to the corporate douchebags, when they buy these companies, they take these distributor margins and knock them down to skin and bones.
Yeah.
And those people are the ones that get affected because the big warehouses have buying power and leverage and still probably get those big discounts. But these guys are just beat up over it, and... Yeah, and luckily they love what they do.
You have to stock the parts.
Yep.
So you have to have them because if people come in and they're like, "Oh, you got this?" No, and then they just don't buy.
Yeah, because they just get on their phone and buy it before they get back to their house and it's there the next day.
Yeah, and I feel bad because of course we're all guilty of doing that. Because
we are, but at the same point, Dave over there has saved my life, my day, my race numerous times because. He had this fitting. He had, a CO2 bottle refill station. He had fuel.
That's where it gets really important.
Yep.
The fuel, tire, CO2, nitrous, that stuff, like the
margins suck.
Orderable.
Margins suck on those things too. So it's like we have to do a better job. All of us across the country. If you have a good speed shop like Westgate, there's a shop that has golden retrievers up in the Northeast. Like just go there. Like I tell people all the time too. I'm like, order your motion parts through those guys, because then when you need a replacement someday, they have it. So
it's nice ordering from someone like that too, because then like it's the same with like ECUs. Like I always try to tell people order through like somebody like Induction, because then if you need anything, you have a direct line to like Induction Performance. They'll sell you any ECU.
Yep.
Buy through them, and then you have like this buffer where you don't have to fight with the company in case anything goes wrong.
No, because guys like Victor and Alpha, they have the direct connection to the guy at the place. So you make one phone call to them, they make one phone call to their person when it's a complicated issue.
Especially like a turbo or something where like, it's not the funnest to like figure out turbo stuff.
Yeah, and oftentimes the people at the companies don't necessarily know either.
I mean, especially on like a 2J, it's like, oh, how much power can I make on a 68, 70? There's few people that really know that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And there's so many combinations you couldn't expect the people on the other end of the line to know every single thing.
Yeah.
If they do, kudos to them.
But I think we have a rise in the small brands making more and more parts. And maybe that's because CNC has become so, like CNC machines and people that operate them have become so readily available. That
the other benefit, too, is back to corporate douchebaggery. I'm going to trademark that term.
I like that, yeah.
You think that's taken already? Or
I know a guy with trademark stuff.
I also call them penny loafer wearers. They've moved these products to China, Taiwan, wherever, good, bad, or otherwise. They've reduced their cost, and sometimes they can keep the quality, but a lot of times they don't. But these money-hungry people keep saying, 7% increase this year, 5%, 10%, 5%. And before you know it, like they've priced themselves out of the market, and this guy's like, I could buy a CNC and make that part.
Yeah.
And man, their price used to be really cheap, but now it's really high. Like some of those imported shifters cost as much as ours now. Like they used to be like, literally I remember buying B&M ratchet shifter for like $178 one time. I think they're like $500 now. Well, it makes it easier to sell a operator, which is all billet, made here for $600 or whatever, $699. So there's not that much of a spread anymore. So I think it's empowered people to do that.
Absolutely, and it's nice to see because having a level playing field is kind of the goal. Yeah. And if China can somehow make a better shifter, by all means, give it a try.
Yep.
But it's unlikely, and you're not going to get any support. So you kind of know you're buying into the abyss in a way. You just kind of have
Well,
to
there's
hope.
just not that like good, comfortable feeling anymore. Like you can just hear people say it, and I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, I've been bit by this before. This part really matters. I'm just gonna buy it from Victor. Or I'm gonna buy it from
Yeah.
somebody that I trust or Motion or whatever. Like,
The other flip side is like, who has it in stock?
Oh, yeah.
I cannot stand companies that pretend to have things in stock, and that is a plague
oh yeah,
that
No,
needs
it's-
to be ended.
Oh yeah, that's
You cannot sell things out of your basement on a speed shop and not actually have anything in stock. That doesn't fly.
Yeah, well, you can do it, but you can't misrepresent it. Like,
Yeah.
just be honest. It's very frustrating.
That
Yeah,
is
when you want something and you're like 6 days later after you bought it and you kind of forgot about it, it ships. You're like, oh my gosh, I needed this today.
Well, racing's a very last minute thing for me, at least. Like
I
for me
just slam that
personally.
overnight button
Yeah.
every time because I'm like, oh, I don't know when I can work on it, especially with a new baby. You
Yeah,
know?
that's true. Congrats, you have a new baby as
Thank
well
you.
since we've last talked. And
Yeah, just when I have 10 minutes to go work on it, that's when I'm going to work on it.
yeah. And especially with the Nova being done, and then it was done, and then you had to do a bunch of stuff to it. And I was talking to Jim the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff to do to the Nova." I was like, "I thought it was done." It's like,
Well, it's like-
there's a list,
Yeah, if you don't
but there's always a list.
Yeah, if you don't evolve it, like we're putting new gear set in it, we're doing this, we're doing that, like changing this, moving the anti-roll bar, just things that you won't know till you go down the track and then you realize, oh, this could be better.
Yeah, kind of. It's where it separates the two different racers.
Yeah.
Because there's two people, like you could look at the same time slip, my time slip, it'll say like, 115 60 foot, 117 60 foot, and whatever, 330 and all that. I could look at it and be like, oh, that's awesome. Another person would be like, I need to get this down, I need to change that. Like, you can have the two different mindsets, and
Yeah.
it's
And I'm very lucky, like I said, having Brett around and Job Spetter, who is helping us tune it from like a high level. That
that's
guy.
cheating, actually.
Yeah. It's Job, if you aren't familiar, he's been the man behind a lot of records, and he's been doing turbo stuff for just an unbelievable amount of time.
I was going to say he is turbocharged race cars.
Yeah, and I think he's tunes other stuff too, but like there's a lot of cars out there winning right now that he tunes that he just enjoys tuning. I don't think he really takes a lot of ego or anything in it, but
Yeah.
but guys like that, when you involve them in your program, they can look at a car like Job walked up first day and he's like, we need to change this. Like he gave me literally an email list of 40 things, and it was super intense, but like everything I've changed has made it that much better. So, and again, that just removes time out of the equation.
I'm going to guess you haven't changed the whole list, though, because I know a few things that he would probably have told you to put on there, change, probably ECU-wise, I would guess.
Maybe I am changing it. Hard to say.
Interesting, yeah, because that's one thing I know about him is very set in his way about ECUs, which no problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. ECUs are basically just whatever, and I'm sure they have a reason for liking. Everybody has a reason for liking it, but when somebody's tuning your car, you run the path of least resistance. So
That frustrates me all the time with, people on like Facebook. They're like, "What ECU should I get?" And I'm like, "Oh, who's tuning your car?"
yeah, they're all good.
Like,
People win with all of them. Just run whatever people have.
You should ask the person that will be helping you on the program or tuning it.
Yep.
Because if you're asking what ECU, I assume you're not tuning it, because
Yeah.
if you were tuning it, you'd probably know.
You would
what
know
ECU
already.
want.
Yeah.
So talk to the person that's helping you on it.
Yeah, and quite frankly, when after it's like done tuned, power management it's pretty much the same concept on all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, up and down boost numbers and
And once it's so different on a drag and drive, like, wide open throttle car is such a different experience than something that you actually have to drive
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
It's very different to have that blip of the throttle and make it work there and then actually work.
Yeah, we didn't have one road mile on the Nova before summer, and we spent the first 2 days killing plugs and trying to get it tuned. That was a poor experience, but yeah.
It's kind of part of the joy of it.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it wasn't 115 degrees, right?
Yeah. It was pretty mild temperatures. So.
Yeah, it seemed nice up there for that.
It was amazing.
Tom does a good job at picking locations based off time of year.
Yeah. Sometimes luck is either on your side or not on your side too. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, we've had some rain in Florida for 6 weeks.
One time it was so cold I was shivering in Florida that first year.
Yeah, that one was a bad deal because my exhaust fell off in the rain, so I ended up getting wet, soaked.
And it was 42 degrees out.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a tough deal. And then thankfully the exhaust was kind of like off under the car, so it was heating it up.
Yeah. That's nice. Fumes and yeah.
It actually helped me not be as cold to have a little bit of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Burning toxic foam and stuff on the carpet and all that.
The EPA really needs to step in and fix that. They can't let people like me just kill themselves.
You got to be able to predict that situation.
They can't let people like me with an SN95 just kill themselves somehow. I mean, that was a worse situation though. The car lost all headlights and taillights.
Yeah, that was more dangerous, and you caused that one.
Yes, I caused that. Well, I mean, technically all of it was caused by me because I built the car.
Yeah.
But losing headlights and taillights on the darkest road in Florida is not a fun experience.
Yeah. Watching you have a power wire draped from the trunk outside the car to power your car was pretty freaking funny.
Well, that was the classic curse of a drag and drive where we were making good time, so we stopped and ate like a good dinner, and then you had a failure, so you were no longer making good time.
Yeah.
And not you had a failure, I had a failure.
It was a failure for me. It cost me about 6 hours of my life I never got back.
That is true, and red.
Yeah, in red, yeah.
It was a bad deal. Actually, the whole lot. Andy, everyone. So
yeah.
That was a rough drag and drive experience.
Yeah.
Do you have any more on your list for this year?
I want to do that street and eat up in the Carolinas.
Devon's deal,
because it's 8 mile, and it seems like just a fun down-home type of deal.
Yeah, it's kind of like some backwoods North Carolina area, which seems kind of cool, too.
Yeah, I mean, if my wife's asking, no. But am I going to try and slide another one or two in? Yeah.
What do you mean? Having a 3-month-old isn't just easy to...
Being gone for 10 days with a 3-month-old was just a rough experience.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you thought about just moving really close to like a really good local racetrack?
I do live really close.
That's always the most helpful to be able to race more, from my experience.
Yeah. No, but that's good. But when you're traveling across the country to then drive across the country, it's a little taxing.
Yeah. That's the worst part of it, is actually getting there.
Yep.
That's why I pretty much will only ever do sick week in Florida, because you
get your fix.
Yeah. I don't need to drive across the country and then drive across the country and then drive back across the country.
Yeah. Yep.
Not enjoyable.
I do want to do the Route 66 one that Tom has. I always thought that'd be cool. But I don't want to do it in a race car. So I might have to figure that out. I might take the Blue Nova and the LSA Swap Nova and try it on that.
That would probably be a good one for that, because that's more of like a cruising route. I mean,
I guess they're racing, but I
just cruise along with it.
I don't think my wife wants to go.
No, she doesn't. I don't think my wife would have any desire to go on a drive.
In fact, I would encourage her not to.
It would be the time that all the failures happen.
Oh, yeah.
If she was there. It would be like peak failure.
And you have no help at that point. Just like, is it fixed yet?
Yeah, but even that, it would be the time a rod comes out the motor just because.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and there's no real fixing that. You've obviously...
Yeah, I've had that happen.
The motor came out of the motor on your deal.
Yeah, it was many pieces.
The block came out of the side of the block.
The block came out of the side of the block. The sleeves were hanging off of it.
Yeah. And now it's the iron L82?
L8T.
L8T?
Yeah.
8T?
L8T, yeah. That'll probably be short-lived, though. It's just such a heavy engine.
Yeah.
But it is good. I mean, we literally went 200, I think, every day. Over 200 mile an hour. I went 207 the one day.
Well, you want to put an aluminum block back in it?
Yeah.
Do you think that would be strong enough?
Yeah, I don't. The motor I had didn't blow up because of strength. It blew up because it ran out of fuel. No. There's a couple aluminum aftermarket options for the LT. That L8T block weighs over 240 pounds without anything in it. So it's like 100, almost like 150 pounds heavier than a stock aluminum block.
They just came out with that Dart Iron Block 2J, and it's 50 pounds heavier than an Iron Block 2J. And I'm like, ugh.
I can't, it's hard to like.
It sounds so awesome because it's so strong, but then you're like 50 extra pounds and you're like,
I did so much lightweight stuff on the Nova and it weighs exactly what it used to weigh because of that block and a few other things. So I'm like, we got to go backwards.
you have all glass in there too, right?
Yeah, except for the back windows, optic armor.
I mean, that would probably save a little bit.
Yeah, I just like a real car.
I know. I like glass too. I just switched to optic armor and I kind of miss the actual glass look because optic armor has this like, there's this waviness in it, and nothing against them. It's just
if you get the thick stuff, it's not so bad, but
it's not. It's just not glass.
Yeah.
But it's also not $300 that I break
every time
I take the motor out.
Yeah.
That kind of kills me a little bit.
That's tough.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think we need the tariffs on the aluminum coming from China? Have you looked into that? That aluminum costs 20%, 25% tax on.
I'm all for a free market, but we also have, like, if there's one thing we learned from COVID, we have to be self-sustainable. You know, like we really got exposed in a lot of areas during that time. So I'm torn on that subject. Like I said, I like a free market, but at the same point, if that drives every single domestic distributor out, how do you support yourself in times of war, tragedy, sickness, like all that stuff that, or just like them cutting us off because they want to win, you know, in economics or war or whatever. So like, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I'm definitely against any tax that hits the end consumer because it definitely, I mean, if you charge you more for aluminum,
well, the theory is
it's gonna charge somebody else more down the line.
The theory is that it doesn't. Theory is that the U.S.
wouldn't.
Yeah, I guess maybe you're right, but
it's always just a downstream thing, and I worry about end consumer as myself.
Yeah,
the most. And there's not really that much aluminum made in the U.S., so it's kind of a confusing thing.
Yeah.
And you guys use more aluminum than
it's kind of the same
most.
Concept of like, do I drive to the local hardware store or performance shop and they're a few bucks more, or do I buy it from Amazon and support that? It's similar concept, you know.
Yeah.
It's like a macro versus micro type of thing, or long term versus short term. I don't know. I see both sides, but
there's 100% tariff on EVs from China, so maybe that makes
it should be 100% tariff anyways.
Just on all EVs.
Domestic or import.
Just even if it's made in Texas, just 100%.
Yeah, you can fake and act like it's green, but it's not.
I don't think anything's green besides using a bus, like taking a city bus.
That's
probably about as green.
When
as
you call a EV not green, people get real emotional, but nobody's shown me facts showing that it's actually. There's no there has to be a chain of custody or if you break it down, it's just like this shell game where, oh no, don't look over here, look over here. Oh, we don't know how long they'll last, or, don't worry about that Charger on the side of the road in Nebraska being diesel powered. Like, no.
It's just moving emissions.
Yeah,
you move emissions from where your car is sitting to where
you're moving it from the U.S. to China where they already have bad emissions. So
yeah, it's like but
it's like stepping on somebody's head so you can stay afloat.
I don't like EVs for the environmental impact at all. I just think that it's cool that you can get 100% torque at 0 RPM.
Same with
my drill,
but that's like. Some of the road race stuff, like Cadillac has that EV start type of deal. That's really cool.
That's what I mean. Like the tech is, I heard this with solar panels. It's like you need to separate the technology from the legislation. And there isn't that in EVs.
Again, a free market should happen. There's not a free market right now. They're supplementing this. They're pushing this. If it just happened naturally, I think it would be a lot more well received. Hydrogen might have its way, this, that, the other, whatever.
It's going to kill the OEMs because they're trying to make it happen, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, it's literally the 80s over again. They're going to get eaten up by the Japanese, who aren't dumb enough to just take their emotions and politics to how they do their business.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, the '80s Japanese won.
It'll be
They're going to win again.
Watch this unfold because we're kind of front row seats to like some kind of crash of some company, multiple maybe billions of dollars. I mean, it's crazy when they're talking about like billions of dollars put into these facilities. Like imagine you put $1 billion into a Motion Raceworks facility.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yeah, it was a mistake.
Well, you can't. Like a normal person can't. It's just propped up by the government and investors. So like, what if you guys actually had to run a proper company that didn't get bailed out? What if you had to operate without supplements from your government so that you could make something for the end consumer? You'd probably actually have to make something people want.
Me and Jim were talking about this, and he has a good insight on that kind of stuff. And he was like, yeah, they just like prop up these CEOs and they just like blame the CEO when it all goes bad and just like,
oh yeah, CEOs
get him out of here. He's fired. It was his fault. We're going to restructure.
CEOs are a 5-year thing, and you can fail miserably and move to the next Fortune 500 company like you didn't fail at the last one. I think it just happened at Walgreens. They came from Starbucks where they went woke, about put them under. Then they got hired at Walgreens. They're going literally under as we speak. That person will, he'll probably be at McDonald's next week or something.
Well, it happens in the military too. It's like failing upwards.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, yeah, I mean, if you just stick around and don't do anything stupid, you'll just eventually get promoted high enough.
Well, and when you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 and you're making 10, 15, 20 million dollars a year, how many years do you actually have to work? Like I don't know if I'd have the stomach for it, but it sounds fun to go work for 5 years and make $50 million and then
get blamed for like a failure and just be like, okay.
Yeah, you go buy an island and live there for the rest of your life off your investments. I don't know.
Oops.
Yeah, and they usually get like stocks and stuff to leave. They get like a golden parachute and all that. Like,
yeah, you just hit them with an oops and just walk away.
Yep.
Just make your money and kind of go on.
Yeah.
Is there any other companies you kind of have your eye on? You can secretly share us something cool, maybe something cool that's coming out.
I kind of have a pipeline of stuff that I'm working on and have my eye on. Like I said, I can literally at this point now, and it's not like I'm Miss Cleo or something like that, but I can just see where things are headed and like the age of the person and all that stuff. And honestly, as of late, like a lot of those companies are coming to me because they're like, we don't want to see our company go to, I won't even name names, but I don't want to see it go to them because we know what happens. It is my life's work, but I don't have kids that want to take it over, or I don't have, a plan to pass it off to somebody that works there, or they can't afford it and I need to retire off this. So like we do have a plethora of these people coming to us, so we're kind of sorting through them. But also right now we're kind of like just enjoying expanding our current portfolio.
Yeah,
so.
kind of coasting with what you got a little bit to
I ain't
strengthen
coasting.
it. Yeah, but like coasting on the current things, strengthening those before you try to diversify.
Yeah, we have so
more.
much technology that we can implement in different areas right now. And like this year, we've spent more on capital expenditure and new technology and machines than we have ever. So like the next 2-3 years, we have so much cool stuff planned. So I'm like,
Gary.
Do I take Gary? Yeah. Well, we got a few robots in the pipeline, but like
robotic arm that moves.
Do I take my eye off of this and like look at the next shiny thing, or do I go deep and wide with what I got? So that's kind of right now where we're at.
Yeah, it almost seems like you need to be in two directions at the same time because the future is going to come before you know it.
Yeah.
And the now is also happening, so it's like
I think about that all the time, and but at the end of the day, there's only so much money and capital too. Like we are a big company now, but we also still have limited, and I don't want to sell my soul for the sake of growing.
Yeah.
I enjoy having ownership of the company, voting rights and all that stuff. Like if I give that up, you just start heading down that path. So it's always a catch-22.
Yeah, that is kind of scary to start giving up a chunk of it.
Yeah. I just won't do that. So
yeah, I mean, there's only so many YouTubers out there to sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's they always say like a partner should be somebody that brings something to the table other than money, because banks have plenty of money. So
yeah, there's plenty of people willing to loan money.
Yeah.
So that's definitely.
But if somebody does have a company they want to sell, let us know. I'll at least take a look at it.
I don't know. There's got to be some cool stuff out there that you have to have your eye
There is.
on, but it's how crazy far out of the industry, like how crazy far out of like your lineup do you go where it's like, oh, this could just be Motion Raceworks product versus this needs to be its own company.
Yeah.
You have to even figure that out too, because that's weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and some of it's so stale. It's like, well, I can just make that. I don't really need your company, which, the problem with the retirement age is sometimes they've let their foot off the gas and it isn't what it used to be. So
There's a lot of that in the industry too, of that people in that like 55, 60, 65-year-old age that build race car parts that are done and they don't want to build race car parts anymore, but nobody's there to buy them out, and maybe they're 1-2 person operation. And it's like, well, what are they going to do besides either they close shop or somebody takes them over?
yeah. And that's like kind of a 2-tier approach too. Like this year I've spent a lot of time trying to, not that I'm like some type of, teacher or anything like that, but I've been trying to mentor some newer companies because I can't do it all. I don't want to do it all. I like have a baby now and a family. But I do want to see the industry keep going. So I've been trying to help some people who want to get into it, like push them forward in the right directions because I think there's value in that. Like I said, I like competition too. Like I think you don't become anything better if you don't have competition. So like some of the people we help are our competition. So
Yeah, it's going to make the car world better to have options because,
yeah.
Everybody's always so scared of monopolies in this world. I don't understand that, but everybody's always so scared of like one business running them all, and it's clearly not in the automotive world.
No, there's a lot, but I want there to continue to be a lot because
I don't think there could be. Even if everybody was bought up by one of these conglomerates, that conglomerate is going to fail because they are so disconnected from everything that they couldn't even take over if they tried.
No. I mean, all they can literally do is bring dry paper to the table and put it down and buy the company. They can't actually, like you said, meaningfully operate it.
Yeah, like it needs to be operated by enthusiasts to be in this industry. And I don't know if there's other industries like that. I'd be actually interested to hear. Maybe like the firearm industry might be like that.
Yeah, I think so.
That's probably about.
When you look at these big corporations owning these companies, like they just can't win. They cannot win. They can win short term, but they can't win long term because the way that you have to run a corporation like that is counterintuitive to the success of an enthusiast-based industry. Like a lot of the times you'll see them kind of glide for a while because of the pipeline of new stuff they had when they bought the company.
Yeah.
But then once that's over, it's over,
And like nothing new at all comes out. And I've heard a lot of new things are coming out soon for some of these big companies that we're kind of low-key talking about, and I'm curious to see how that changes things.
In the background, just being connected where I'm connected, like these companies, they get bought, they're real excited, they try to keep it running, but then like some of them I know of 3 or 4 right now where they're preparing to sell. And so they've literally said we have $0 for new products. We're not developing new products. We're not releasing new products for the next 2 years because we are trying to get lean and mean and like make as much profit so when we sell, we can, take home as much money as possible. Like, and if you take that times 10, 20, 30, 40 companies, that is where the industry comes to a halt. So that's what's scary to me from the background perspective.
That is a scary thought as they coming to a screeching, like not halt, but like a lull, like a deep lull of that boomer generation. It's that's what it is. It's a lot of these like boomer generation is selling off their assets and getting out of the industry or just dying or just walking away.
And if you read between the lines, that also means they're trying to save money and quality tech support, track support, all that stuff. So I think it's important to have the new generation so that we have signs on the wall at the track, we have support at the track, we have new products, and we continue to do what we like to do.
The same kind of thing goes for track owners too, though.
Yep.
Like that same thing could be said about some of these track owners. I mean, luckily here we got 2 track owners that are in their 30s, so not really worried about that. Well, Garrett's not even in his 30s yet.
He's a young pup.
Yeah, and Victor's 30, so it's like, young track owners here, so that's a nice addition. And even, have you talked to the guy that's building the one up in
Brooksville.
Yeah, Brooksville.
Yep. No, I haven't. I actually just learned about that, but it's really cool to see that happen.
He's building like a concrete 8th mile track.
Yeah. A world-class looking track, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where it's just like, just spend the money.
Within driving distance. And the same thing happened at that Flying H in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Guy's like kind of an enthusiast and then just went all in. Byron Dragway up in Rockford, Illinois, where we just went. I just talked to those people, the same thing. So we have to rally around those people.
And the Bandemirs have a bunch of money that they want to spend on a track, from what I understand. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Happens.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
I get it if they don't. It's their money.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
Yep.
Be cool if they did.
Yep. They've contributed a lot to the world, and hopefully they continue to.
Yeah,
but
they really have no obligation to have to.
there's a lot of young families involved in that deal, though, so hopefully they want to continue on.
Yeah, I just always have like kind of visions of racing at Bandemir because it's just such a.
It was iconic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really hoping they would say, okay, just kidding. We're still open this year because the deal's not done. Because I heard, I don't know, they haven't moved out, so.
Yeah, it's still sitting there. I think it was bought by an auto auction.
I think it was Copart, maybe.
Yeah,
but
which is even the worst situation ever.
Yeah, those people. So I guess they would have a sheriff show up every day when they had a track outing. There was a group of people in the neighborhood that would call the police, and the police would just show up and like drink a lemonade and like say they were there or whatever.
Yeah.
But
why do they?
How ironic that now they're gonna have literally a junkyard to look at versus a beautiful racetrack that only had 10 races a year.
Friggin' zoning is the dumbest.
That is called
ever.
karma. That is called karma.
That it became a junkyard.
Yes.
Yeah,
you're going to see wrecked cars coming in and out.
And they see it. If you have one of those houses, you see Bandemir.
Oh, it's on display.
Clearly.
If you have the house 6 houses deep, you can still see it.
Yeah, like
it's a trophy case of now going to be junk cars.
Somehow all those houses were like bleachers where they were like levels
yes.
to where they all saw it.
Yeah.
And they could all hear Bandemir what was going on there.
Yeah. So they deserve it.
But yeah, Flying H looks awesome. Shout out to them. Any new track opening is definitely, I don't envy that at all because that's a uphill battle for sure. And
I think about it every day, wanting to buy my own track.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, oof, I don't know what time I would do that with, but I do feel like it's a little bit of an obligation to our generation to just bite the bullet.
Maybe Orlando Speed World.
Yeah.
Maybe Ozzy might.
I don't want to live in Orlando, though.
Nobody does.
Well, the traffic on I-4 is so bad.
You'd have to get a helicopter as well.
No, I'm good on that.
Come on, you can get a helicopter and fly there.
I've rode in helicopters, and I just think to myself, I don't have that. I have really bad ADD. I can't pay attention to all those things happening subsequently.
Yeah, it's just like constant doing something and like constant fighting the stick to fly the helicopter. Yeah. I think we've probably flown in similar helicopters.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's not the most warm, fuzzy feeling you get.
No, I think you're just constantly on edge waiting for something to not go right.
You'd have to think about what track you'd buy then. I mean, you definitely wouldn't buy a circle track because that would be crazy.
I'm guessing it's going to be down the road when my daughter's older.
That's true. Well, dude, we'll end it off here. That was awesome. Thanks for coming on. Any closing arguments for you?
No, I just, spend your money wisely.
Optimistic.
Whether it's with a speed shop at a racetrack, don't complain about the entry cost. Support all the small businesses, not just Motion. Like we're doing great, but I want to see a lot more of companies like us, and I'm here to support them. So I think just consciously pay attention to that, and just because, especially like you said, if there's signs at the track, definitely support them. But if you have the choice, try to go the extra mile, even if it's not quite as easy as ordering from Amazon. It does make a big difference.
Yeah, racetracks haven't raised their price in a long time.
Yeah,
still $20 and $10 to get in.
I saw somebody the other day complaining about, they wanted $50 for test and tune. I'm like, dude, just pay it, because the alternative is that you have nowhere to test and tune.
Yeah, VHT I think has went up like 80%.
I would think it'd be like 800%. It's ridiculous.
It may have been something crazy like that. I know it's went up a lot.
But even still, they deserve to make a profit. So, if a track holds a race and it's not 100% payout, there's a reason for that. If you guys aren't bringing people to bleachers. But That's a whole nother.
Yeah, that is actually a whole nother thing because I've often said, whose responsibility is it to fill the stands? Is it the promoter, the racetrack owner, or the drivers? And sometimes I think as a driver, it's a little bit on me.
It's everybody.
A good amount on me.
Yeah.
I take a lot of the brunt about not filling the stands.
Yep.
And Stevie Fest is always really strong about this. He's always like, I just want to race in front of people. And
We
I was
all
like,
do. Because
respect
the payouts are better. My friends that are track owners that I know, when they have a good turnout, you can like see it in their face that they want to reinvest money. They want to continue to do this. When they get beat up over the payout or, whatever little disputes, like you can just see that they're, it's just like me being a business owner. When you have a bad day, you're like, man, I wish somebody would come along and give me some money today, but it just takes that glimmer of hope of a few good events for them to keep going. So it's on, like if nothing else is on us, it's on us to keep them happy and encourage them, even when, somebody cuts in line in the staging lanes or, your hot dog's not as warm as you want it to be or whatever.
At least be a good racer as well. And like, when somebody comes up asking about your car, try to be, try to be like open and helpful and talkative. And like, I try that, at least that I can do. And, try to post when I'm there and that kind of stuff. Try to get people in the bleachers, but it's kind of on all of us. That's like a 3-tiered system to get that to happen.
Yep. Because you see people come up and, they'll just kind of quietly look at a car. And then, like, the next day, like, my Nova coming back out is kind of hit home for me. It's like people just, they're not like, it's not like they're at a Taylor Swift concert where they're freaking out. But then, like, the next day they'll post, like, this is the coolest Nova I've ever seen. Like, giving all this compliments. I'm like, man, that makes me feel good. And you see it with other people too, but those people aren't necessarily saying it. So if you're not inviting for them to come up, like that might have been the highlight of their trip to the racetrack. So
I know I always try to like, if you want to come walk around my car, like the pits are open. I'm not blocking it off. Like come live it up. Like come look at the car, please. That any car guy at the track, 9 out of 10 of them, they just want to tell you about their car. If you go ask them, you may be sitting there for an hour and have to walk away. Some of these
exactly,
guys. I guarantee they want to talk about their car. They 100%. Don't bring it out because
it's what they live and die off of. Otherwise, we would have a lot more money and time. So
that's true. We would definitely have a lot more time. And well, we'll end it off there. This is always fun, Doug. We'll have this powwow again, I'm sure, before long. But guys, check out Motion Raceworks on all the good things, TBM Brakes and
Rife Sensors. Don't forget about Rife Sensors.
Rife Sensors and Fluid Works now too, and all kinds of good stuff. Go harass them. Maybe you can call up and talk to Jim or Brett and harass them because that's always fun.
Yeah, and if you want to buy something, that's fine too.
Yeah, they'll sell you something. They'll convince you. If you talk to Brett long enough, he'll convince you to buy something.
Yeah, you'll have a Coyote before you know it.
Exactly, from Fast Forward Race Engines. All right, see you guys.
Thanks.